Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais. Andrew and Nick are on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. And welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast. Nick is back with me, back behind the mic. Andrew, on the other hand, is not here. He took a new job as Starlink satellite technician, but he was a little concerned about having to hold his breath for extended periods of time. So I'm kind of like, I don't know anything about maintaining satellites. It sounds kind of cool, but I'm a little concerned for him.
My uncle did satellite tech work for a while. I don't remember breath holding being a problem, but...
Okay, but was he a satellite tech like on the ground or satellite tech like up in the air? Because that's a little bit of a different kind of satellite tech.
I do believe rooftop install.
Okay.
It's a long way down from a roof.
Yeah, but I think it's a lot longer way down from geostationary satellites.
Accurate.
Anyway, I'm going to continue to goof on Andrew until he graces us with his presence again. Because
we're going to continue to goof even after, but
okay, let's get down to the admin work. I'm going to reorder these things just a little bit because I have to thank the patrons for supporting the show, including our newest patron, Mike, who just joined within the last 48 hours, and he is already he's already posted himself in the Signal chat for all of y'all's abuse to be heaped on him. Thanks for being a good sport, Mike. And I am now completely and totally convinced that Eddie has that spiel he gives everybody that I am not at liberty to repeat on the show.
That's patron chat only.
I am convinced he has that copied into a note or a Word document because it is he whoops it out way too fast. He's way too excited
when the wording's different every time. It's always a little bit different. I think he just types that shit up in like a minute.
That's more concerning though, because it's a little bit different, but it's still close enough every single time. It's a little bit concerning.
Yep.
So yes,
they're a fun group.
That to me, that has been one of the weirdest, but the most organic parts of podcasting is that, I find that every show attracts its own breed of psychopaths to it. And
it does.
And within the group that is the patrons of this podcast, you find this weird mismatch of guys that are in preparedness, guys that are in technology. Lots of my wife says it's the nerd bunch.
Yes, accurate.
Which is not a bad thing. I happily call myself a nerd. I think being a nerd is pretty cool, actually. And within that group, everybody is a nerd about something. Everybody has their area of expertise. But it's the cool thing about it is that, there's if you have a question and none of us know the answer, you win a prize.
Yeah, one of us will figure it out very quickly because we don't like not knowing things, turns out.
Yeah, as it turns out, not knowing is worse than getting bombarded with 14 different reasonably well-informed opinions.
Absolutely.
Yes, Raggle. Being a nerd is definitely better than being a dork. Being a dork...
100%.
Look, I've been telling people since I was in high school, hey, you better be nice to nerds because they will rule the world one day. And look at the tech explosion. Nerds pretty much do rule the world now.
If you're not obsessed with what you do, you're never going to be the best at it.
Yeah. So on the back of thanking the patrons, I do have a request, and I don't ask much of y'all, but I noticed the other day looking at it that the audio podcast, wherever you happen to look at it, whether it's whether it's the iTunes directory or any of the various places that it's broadcast to, we haven't had a comment or a review in 3 years. And I don't want to. I said yes, you're being detained because I know there's going to be that one knucklehead libertarian in the bunch says, "Am I being detained?" Yes, you are. All I'm going to ask, and I'm not going to ask for 5-star reviews. Unless you just really love the show, in which case you might want to check yourself into a mental health professional. But I will say that
chat.
He's the craziest one of the bunch.
Yeah, maybe.
But I would just say that, like, engagement drives things. It helps. So, like,
Mhm.
I like a comment, a little bit of interaction. Not only is it fun for me and Nick because we get to talk to y'all while we're goofing off doing the show, but
Yep.
it also helps attract other like-minded sociopaths. Just saying.
Absolutely. Oh, maybe we just need to try harder to offend a lady like back in the day and get her to just bombard everything we post for a
Yes,
month.
I did tell Nick that story. It was, I want to say I'd only been podcasting for about a year, and I don't even remember what it was I said, but I really upset some poor little either young millennial or Gen Z lady with something I had said, which is pretty hard to believe because I'd never say anything controversial. But yeah, she was upset enough to leave us a 1-star review and then like comment bomb everything we posted. I don't know, go back for weeks.
Thanks for driving the algorithm.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for driving the algorithm. I almost want to like dig back through 8 years of social media history just to try to remember what it was exactly I said that. I don't think it's worth the effort because I can
Probably not.
pretty much just like pull stuff out of a hat and be like, oh yeah, this probably pissed her off real bad.
No, there's that. Yeah.
Anyway, merch. If you want to support the show and get a shirt for your trouble, those links are in the show description. It supports a small family-owned business. Cypress Survivalist is heading towards our first quarterly event. It will be in June.
Yes.
I will do homework. And next time we talk on the show, I will even have the date and the details prepared for y'all, potentially. Because, no, actually, it may not be next show. It might be the one after that. Because not this weekend, but next weekend is our next board meeting. So one of the things that has to get worked out is what exactly we're going to do for this next event. Like, are we going to just do like a lunch and a hangout? Are we going to actually try to teach a class? I know I was speaking to my sister, who was our resident medical nerd on staff. And I know she had mentioned she was going to look at taking the instructor course for Stop the Bleed.
Ooh, that's
so that she could actually like, she could actually like teach the course.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that'd be phenomenal.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think it's something that the community could make use of. And second of all, I like the idea that then we could offer that as a thing. Like, as part of the nonprofit, we could offer that class.
Yeah, when just a little bit to cover your guys' expenses and whatnot. That'd be great. Because then people could leave having officially been trained in something.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things where, like, quite frankly, my sister's she's been an EMT and a paramedic since she was 18 years old. Like, she is an absolute certifiable badass when it comes to keeping the red stuff inside the people.
And those are good to have around.
Yeah. You don't want to have a reason for them to be useful to keep around, but they always end up being useful to keep around. Put it that way.
Yeah, buddy.
All right.
You can never have enough first aid classes, in my opinion.
No, because my experience has been that, like, when you have a need for a person with that kind of experience, you usually need more than one of them.
Yeah.
Because casualty events turn into mass casualty events very quickly.
And man, a lot of cars hold more than 2 people.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've been driving long enough to watch a 1-car accident turn into a 12-car accident.
Yeah, absolutely. Not 12 is 12 is more than I've seen, but I was involved in one that was 3 vehicles, 5 people.
Which now means how many people do you need to triage all that quickly?
Realistically, I mean, at least 5.
I mean, but you could do it with one person.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's also like my greatest argument about like every workplace of any reasonable size. To like take this to the bank. I have even given this spiel to like the head of my workplace, and it hasn't really gone anywhere, unfortunately. But like I've told everybody, like every workplace could stand to benefit from 10% of their staff having a Stop the Bleed class.
Yeah.
And maybe even a little bit of a basic like first aid, Stop the Bleed, and some basic triage knowledge. Just because, think about that. That means in a workplace of 50 people, you've got 5 that basically, from the military perspective, have combat lifesaver level of training.
Mm-hmm.
And in a larger organization where you've got like 300, 400, 10% is 30 or 40 people. Like, that's the ability to do massive casualty care from internal resources.
Yeah, that's one thing that I don't see enough of in the manufacturing sector that I work in. And we work with heavy power equipment, and man, that stuff can go so wrong so fast. We've
Like
got,
the lathe video you sent me. That, by the
yeah,
way, if my butt had clenched any harder, I would have had to replace my pants.
yes,
Like,
yeah, that is one of the tamer lathe videos.
yes, the less tame one. Like, I don't cringe easily,
You
but
don't want to see it.
yeah, I can't remember if that was like the Russian lathe video or whatever it was, but whatever happened.
Yeah, the guy's polishing the shaft on a 20-foot bed lathe.
And then next thing you know, he had no bones.
Mm-hmm. No, he had bones. Lots of little tiny pieces.
No, I'm pretty sure his entire skeleton got turned into powder.
It can. Yeah, they are unforgiving.
Yeah. Anyway, so the topic of today is fitness, something that my chubby, 30 BMI body knows very little about.
Hey, we all need to work on it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't even feel like this is something you have to sell the average person, but I feel like when you throw the word fitness out, if you've got 10 people standing there, you're going to get 11 different ideas of what fitness means, because you're going to get that person that thinks fitness is lifting weights, fitness is being skinny, fitness is this, fitness is that. And like, for the sake of argument, I'm 42. Nic, you are
34. 35.
I was going to say 36, so I was close.
Yeah. Forgot to have a birthday recently.
Well, happy birthday.
Well, thank you. It was a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't keep track of that. That is on the wife. She remembers when my birthday is. I regularly have to consult my driver's license. It has not mattered in many years.
Yeah, I mean, what was I was told about birthdays one time. At 18, you're legal. At 21, you could drink, and at 65, you get a discount at Denny's.
25, you get cheaper car insurance.
Woohoo!
I mean, it made a difference to me. My insurance was expensive.
But I drove crappy old cars that had liability only then.
Ooh, yeah, no. I had a not new, but a late model, reasonably newer, like 4-year-old pickup at the time.
Actually, I stand corrected. 25? I think I was still driving old used cars at that point. But I digress. Anyway,
nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, but it does keep your car insurance lower. Thankfully, when you're a starving college student.
Oh, absolutely.
But the whole thing about fitness really to me is like I've never been the person that was like, I'm gonna aspire to run like a 6-minute mile, or I want to lift a lot of weights. Like, that was never my thing. Honestly, what I was always more focused on was when I was younger and I was still doing a lot of physical activity before I shifted into like, white collar office jobs.
Right.
I spent a lot of time working with my hands. I spent a lot of time lifting stuff. So like my biggest priorities back then, really and truly, it was mostly back and core and shoulders, because I knew that everything I did was going to involve lifting a heavy weight, usually carrying that heavy weight up a ladder, or walking 100 yards carrying that heavy weight. So like, everything in the way that I worked out back then was really focused around like my shoulders need to be beefed up, shoulders, lats, lower back, especially because I've blown my back out 3 times.
You got to be really careful with that, especially. And this is a big part of the reason why I wanted to bring up fitness is injury prevention and injury recovery.
Yes.
Because, I know you've got it on further down on here, but flexibility, core strength, balance, flexibility. If you don't do regular stretching, you probably should. And it doesn't have to be daily, but a couple times a week. Go on YouTube, go on whatever. There are apps for it. How to stretch various muscle groups, how to stretch your whole body. Hell, yoga is a fantastic option for that. Phenomenal. If you are more flexible, you are less prone to injuring yourself, either muscles, joints, or tendons. Core strength, anybody that's ever had abdominal surgery or like an appendectomy or a hernia repair can tell you how much you use your core. Every muscle you move is going to make your stomach hurt, is going to make your core hurt. So, I'm not trying to advocate for people going out and being a triathlete or anything like that. But what I wanted to bring up was everyday, life improving fitness. So work on your endurance, work on a little bit of basic cardio. If you do have a physically demanding job, make sure that you are doing the maintenance to your body to make so that you're not building compounding injuries. So, if you work, say, construction or something like that, don't go home, take a cold shower or a hot shower, and then immediately just sit on the couch. You've been using your muscles all day. You need to loosen them up afterward. Otherwise, you're going to get those musculoskeletal injuries building up over time. I'm probably in a little bit better shape than you, Phil, just partially because of being younger than you, partially because I work on it a little bit more. I don't have a kid. I'm about 215 pounds, 6 foot tall. I don't know what that translates to at BMI, but
it honestly, it translates to fuck all.
Yeah.
Like there is, and I dealt with this when I was in the Army, but like there is no rational way to equate a BMI to a height and weight like graph. It doesn't work.
I don't think so.
Well, put just as a side note, when I was still in the Army, I got busted on because I was overweight. But then when I've
seen pictures of you from the Army, you were not overweight.
Well, I was 5 foot. I was probably about 5'10", about $175. But according to the Army, I was a few pounds overweight. So they taped me, and I want to say I was like 18% body fat.
That's reasonable.
It was perfectly reasonable. I'm probably a fair bit more than that now. But even now, I'm like 5 foot, 245.
Yeah.
I am a big, chunky guy, but I'm hardly like, a critically obese fat body. But the point remains is that whenever you try to equate things like I am this height, therefore I should weigh this much, I personally just pitch that whole notion in the trash because I've known people that are, 3-4 inches taller than me, and they're shaped like a beanpole. So they're naturally going to weigh 30-40 pounds less than I am, despite being taller.
Right. And that's why I didn't really want to, I didn't really put weight loss in any of these, because you need to, I guess, adjust your expectations for weight or BMI based on your build. Because even when I was, when I was in high school and I had been doing heavy weightlifting and heavy cardio for like 3 straight years, I got down to a BMI of like 14%, which was relatively nuts. I still weighed 210 pounds, but I had arms twice the size of what I have now. So you can't compare that. You can't compare that on a height weight chart.
And for the sake of comparison, like the best shape I've been in was when I was in Iraq, because I had nothing to do but work and work out.
Exactly.
Kind of works out that way.
It does.
So when I came home on leave, I weighed 190 pounds and I was 5'11".
Right.
Had not an inch of fat on me you could pinch. But at the same time, like going back to what I wrote here, like core strength, balance, flexibility, I wasn't in the gym doing lots of like free weights. I was doing about the only thing I was really doing that was like really structured. I was doing a lot of squatting because again, lots of heavy lifting in that job, lots of picking stuff up. And I beat it into my head pretty early on. Like my lower back and my legs have got to be extremely strong so I can lift this stuff and carry it for prolonged periods of time, but also because I started noticing that the stronger my back and my legs were, if I was carrying stuff on an uneven surface, I was less likely to, like, do that little thing where your foot slips and you catch it, and the next thing you know, you tweak the disc in your back. It's like all of my quote unquote fitness goals were always about preventing injury, because personally, like my body, my build, I have never had trouble putting on or maintaining muscle. I've always been just a naturally a larger frame guy. I have struggled to maintain my weight. Sometimes I think as a result of having like the strength that I do, I've been very prone to injuries. I've blown this shoulder completely out, blown that hip out, blown my back 3 times. And it's always because I pick something up like, oh, I can pick that up and carry it because I can.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it's once you load your body up with all that weight, the least little thing gets off center, gets out of kilter, and the next thing you know, I'm limping the next day.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why stretching is important and working on balance is important, as well as like, Phil, have you ever looked into bodyweight fitness routines that focus on like control muscles over strength and endurance building? So a lot of yoga deals with that, where you're not necessarily working just like your pecs, your biceps, your triceps, your glutes. You're working all the little muscles in those muscle groups that help align your spine, align your knee, align your shoulder, and help you control the strength that your larger muscle groups use.
This kind of harkens back to something I saw recently where they were doing like kind of contest of strength.
Yeah.
And they had 4 bodybuilders and 4 farmers.
Yep.
And the farmers were like not these big old buff cut up guys, but they had farm strength. Anybody that's ever been around farmers knows them boys are built different.
Well, it's because bodybuilding targets major muscle groups, and it targets for growth. It doesn't target necessarily for strength. Like if you look at the difference between, say, like me and my wife are rewatching Game of Thrones. The guy that plays the Mountain, he's or was a world strongman competition guy. So his build is entirely different from like the show bodybuilder builds, which is entirely different from what I call a working strength build, which is like your bricklayers, your farmers, your rod busters and stuff like that. You can build muscle groups like your biceps, your chest. You can build your glutes. You can build your abs to puff up and stick out. You can absolutely make them do that without increasing your strength all that much compared to what you can do when you're focusing on strength building. But I mean, the strongest guy I ever met was probably one of my great uncles, and that dude was maybe 5'6", and he didn't look it, but he had spent his entire life throwing hay bales and wrestling cattle. So it's just.
I will say that back in the day when I was working in tire shops, putting myself through college, like most of the guys that are in there, bearing in mind that these are guys that are they're lifting engine and truck parts.
Yeah.
Pretty much for an 8-hour day. And none of these guys were huge. None of these guys were particularly like defined as far as muscle. Hell, we had one guy that was like about my height. He had to weigh 165 pounds. He was in his 50s. But I'm going to tell you, he could snatch a freaking 80-pound wheel and tire set off the side of like a heavy-duty truck and just walk across the shop with it like it was nothing.
Well, yeah, now, he knows how to use his body.
18, 19-year-old Phil was like, how in the hell is he lifting the same amount I am? And I'm a lot bigger than he is, but I didn't understand it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you can learn to use your body more efficiently when you do it all the time like that. But the reason why one of the reasons we wanted to talk about fitness today was, Phil, your improvements that you saw with your blood sugar was a big one that inspired this, as well as just during an emergency, if something does happen and you have to say move debris, move a person who's injured, move yourself. That's one of the more common after disaster injuries is somebody going to move something and either falling or injuring themselves while doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say that, like, in the name of full disclosure, so like I'm hypoglycemic for those that don't know, which is this funny little thing where you have a super hyperactive pancreas. And every time you eat something you're not supposed to, it says, hooray, insulin. And it just makes your blood sugar go to hell in a handbasket. Now, the way that some people in an unhealthy way deal with this, and the way I used to deal with it was whenever you feel your blood sugar go down, you think, I need sugar because that makes me feel better. But then that makes your blood sugar go up, and then your pancreas says, hooray, insulin again. And you do this over and over and over.
Creates a roller coaster.
It does. And I found that I was in a situation with my blood sugar where, like, I was always 4 hours away from crashing. I had to eat, I didn't have to eat a lot, but I had to eat very, very regular intervals throughout the day to maintain my blood sugar. And I think a lot of that was just I wasn't eating the right things. So like what I came around to that has worked for me, and I wouldn't espouse it for anybody else without saying just try it and see if it works for you. But what I centered on was a high protein, high fat diet. So lots of eggs, lots of red meat, a little bit of chicken. I'm just not a huge chicken person. But like my go-to lunch for a long time was just sausage and eggs or bacon and eggs.
Sure.
And limited carbs, no processed sugar, no complex carbs, very little to no prepackaged food, and just get rid of all your highly refined sugars.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now here's the thing. If I want pizza because it's pizza night, I'll still go out and eat pizza, but the next day I have to get back on the wagon. If I want to have like a whiskey and Coke or a cream soda and Coke, I can have that. I just can't have it every friggin' night. Like it's, like this stupid old adage about everything in moderation really does work. But the thing that I heard that has always made a lot of sense to me was a nutritionist said you should regard all sugar and all complex carbohydrates as a recreational drug.
Sure.
With the understanding that if you have that thing, every now and then isn't going to kill you, but if you have it all the time, it's bad.
Yeah.
So I've framed a lot of like my thoughts around dieting in this vein of if I choose this more often than this, I'm doing okay. It doesn't mean never have this. It just means you can't have it all the time. You gotta make better choices. And then when you decide, I just want pizza today, you just eat the daggum pizza and don't beat yourself up over it. Like that's the most self-destructive thing I've seen people do with dieting is that they get this thought in their head that my diet has to be perfect or it doesn't work. And then the first time they slip, they defeat themselves. They tell themselves, "Oh, it's all. I ruined all that effort." And I'm like, you can't live like that. Like it's not. I don't think it's mentally healthy to go down that road.
I agree. You hear it all the time. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Hell no.
Like Phil and I, neither one of us are bastions of physical perfection. Absolutely not. You think either one of us is keeping up with David Goggins? Absolutely not. Not even close.
I have never and do not anticipate myself modeling for Calvin Klein underwear.
Nope.
Ever in life.
But when something does come up and you or I have to do a physical task, we're able to accomplish that task. You're able to roll under your car and get to work with a wrench. The other day I was having to do a bunch of plumbing in my house. I didn't have a problem with that. I was in very awkward positions. Okay. I have a big water filter that I have to get out of my house. Can I move that on my own? It's looking like probably no, because I can't get the other half of the water out of it. And 8 pounds to the gallon plus filter media plus canister. And I did try. And you know what? I think if I did continue to try to do it by myself, I would probably injure my back. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to go get assistance and a dolly.
Yes.
Because, part of physical fitness is knowing your own limits and preventing injuries that will cause you more problems in the future. I mean, there are things that happen to all of us that we can't prevent. Your wife's car accident, for instance. There was probably nothing she could have done to prevent that.
I mean, she could have slowed down a little bit, but
well, I'm just saying, like, car accidents happen. Yes, sometimes the person that gets injured is the one at fault, but I don't really know the story, so I'm assuming that she was probably attempting to drive reasonably safe.
We'll talk about that.
I know the after effect of it.
Yeah. Well, the after effect is that she had she tore her right foot off, crushed her right leg, crushed her right arm.
Right.
She's dealing with lifelong injuries.
Yeah, some lifelong joint damage.
But at the same time, like when the two of us decided to like start taking better care of ourselves, taking better control of our diet, her focus was losing weight because every pound you have to carry on an already extremely damaged knee and hip and ankle is not helping the situation.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
She was faced with the choice of get your weight down or cut your foot off. Like
one of these is less permanent than the other.
But what her doctor had left her at the point of was like, you're either going to lose 20 or 30 pounds, or you might as well make peace with having to get your foot removed and get a prosthetic, because you're at that point where your ankle cannot take the strain at your weight and you are losing mobility. And basically the doctor told her, like, you're reaching the point where you're not going to be able to walk very much because of your weight, and not being able to walk very much is going to make your weight go up.
Yeah, absolutely will.
So once you get to a certain point, it's too late to do anything about it except what's coming. So at that point,
cascade failure at that point.
At that point, Gillian and I made some serious dietary choices. We started walking 4 or 5 times a week.
And that's all it takes.
I'm going to tell you, that little lady dropped 35, almost 40 pounds.
Nice.
She's walking again. She can go on hikes. I mean, not like crazy, like you and I talked about the other day. We were talking about hiking. Absolutely. My family is not going to do a 10 or 15 mile hike. Gillian can't take it. Piper doesn't really have the want to.
I wouldn't expect her to.
But I tell you what, a 2, maybe 3 mile hike, if the terrain's not too crazy, she could do that. And she enjoys it.
That is very impressive given the extent of her injuries that she had. That's extremely impressive. I mean, if anything, that is a minor miracle of modern medicine, that they were able to put her back together that well.
Yeah. Well, the truth of the matter is that the doctor that put her foot back on said she'd never walk on it. So she's good.
She's stubborn.
Imagine that. Any woman that can keep up with me must be a little bit stubborn.
There you go.
But I mean,
stubbornness has its benefits.
It does. We call that strong-willed when we're not using the dirty word.
That's fine.
But, I mean, that was the thing of it, is that my wife was focused on getting her weight down for her joint health. And I was really focused on being able to better control my blood sugar. And my blood sugar got out of whack it was within the last couple of weeks. And I was thinking about it. I think that's probably the first time in over a year I've had an episode where like my blood sugar got wildly out of whack. But that's exactly what happened to me this time. Like, I woke up in the morning. I was doing some work for Disaster Coffee. I was working on, I think I woke up in the morning. I had to do some work for Disaster Coffee. I was doing something for the podcast. I was working on a bunch of stuff, and I was doing
got away from you.
I was doing the Flight of the Bumblebee routine, running around the house. And about 1:00 in the afternoon, all of a sudden I had this dizzy spell out of nowhere. Like, how you had that moment where like you feel the whole room go woo, right around real fast. Well, I felt that. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? Why do I feel this way? I didn't feel hungry.
I have not drank nearly enough to be this dizzy.
I didn't feel hungry. I didn't feel like all the classic symptoms of Phil, you stupid, you moron, you forgot to eat this morning. I didn't feel any of that. I felt dizzy all of a sudden. And then as soon as I felt that, I put it together really quickly, like, crap, I missed breakfast. It's 1:00 in the afternoon. It's got to be my blood sugar.
Lunch.
Yeah. So at that point, like, I very quickly, I fried up some eggs. I grabbed some sausage, like load my body up with all the protein I could handle.
Mm-hmm.
And then the nausea started, and then the migraine started. At that point, I was like, okay, I'm just along for the ride at a certain point. Like, I know how my blood sugar works. And for anybody that deals with diabetes, this will probably sound very familiar to you. But like for me, once I hit a certain point in this escalating little cascade effect, I am along for the ride. There is no stopping it. I'm going to get a migraine. I might throw up. I've only passed out once, but that really wasn't fun. I don't want to do that again.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
But
that's catastrophically low.
But I get to the point where the only thing I can do is shove my body full of protein to try to, because I know that it will take longer than like a Coke or some sugar would to get my blood sugar propped up, but I know that the protein will fix the problem.
Yeah, the protein's a long-term fix. The Coke is a short-term fix with side effects.
Yeah. So I loaded my body with protein. Eggs are a superfood. If you are diabetic, or if you struggle with hypoglycemia and you don't like eggs, treat it like freaking medicine and start eating them. Because I'm telling you, I am convinced that adding substantial quantities of eggs in my diet has helped more than any one single thing.
Well, it's good proteins, good fats. It's got most of the fats your body needs in it right there. And they used to say that eggs are really bad for your cholesterol. I don't know. I've seen some other studies recently where that didn't seem to be nearly as true.
What I'm going to say is this. I've done the research. I've read the studies. Let me give the experts in air quotes for just one brief moment that eggs might not be the best thing in the world for you. Lots of cholesterol, lots of fat, blah, 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 blah. Do you know what the long-term effects of having high blood sugar are?
High blood sugar?
Yes. It directly leads to heart disease. It directly leads to arterial disease. It encourages plaque buildup in the arteries.
Cholesterol too.
But see, here's the thing. There are studies that show that increased cholesterol, if your blood sugar is low, don't cause any of those problems. There's a body of evidence out there that says that cholesterol is good and cholesterol is bad, and you can get 10 nutritionists, you'll get 11 different opinions. But there is no nutritionist in the right mind that is going to tell you that having perpetually high blood sugar is a good thing. So
that makes sense.
So me being hypoglycemic, where my blood sugar goes really high and then really low and really high and really low, I'm going to address that problem, and I'm going to fix that problem. And if the end result of that is that my cholesterol is a little bit too high, but my blood sugar is where it's supposed to be, if I have to make that trade, I have to make that trade.
Yeah, I think, at a certain point, everybody has to make those trade-off decisions for themselves. And this is one good reason to experiment with your diet. Obviously, I'm not saying experiment with your diet as in eating 2 Twinkies and drinking a Coke for breakfast.
What the hell can happen?
We all know that's a terrible idea. I mean, I know some people that have done it, and they were not very old when they passed away.
I will say this much, though, kind of in the same vein as what we're talking about. One of our patrons, Tommy, recently talked about how I think he said he had gone full carnivore.
Yeah.
And he is diabetic, and it has been extremely helpful to him with his blood sugar. So
it's a more stable form of energy, the proteins and fats. You don't get the glycerin and insulin spikes.
Yeah. So like I said, for Phil with his hyperactive pancreas,
glucose, not glycerin.
Yeah.
Glucose.
It is in my best interest that I do whatever I have to keep my blood sugar within bounds. It is going to be better for me for long-term health outcomes. It is better for me in the short term. The closer I stick to, I hate even calling it a diet because it's not a diet, because it's I consider it like dietary guidelines. But the closer within these boundaries I stick, I feel better. My joints hurt less. I don't have, the shakes, the migraines, the headaches, and everything from my blood sugar crashing. Good. My weight is naturally easier to control, which has always been a problem for me. Like right now, my wife and I are back on the, got to fight the battle, the bulge routine, because I got up to like 250, which is heavier than I'm supposed
up on
to
you
be.
Quick.
Yeah. So, and we're back to walking. We're back to watching what we eat. Like it's an on again, off again.
It is
struggle.
Easier to do in the summer than the winter, even though your winters aren't really winter.
But our winters are wet.
Yes. That's what they make rain jackets for.
Anyway.
I know you own them. You live in what is probably nearly a swamp.
Well, we almost do live in a swamp, but for point of order, if it weren't for the fact that we actually get a frost every year, this would be considered a tropical climate.
Yeah.
In terms of temperature and rainfall.
So you own a rain jacket is what you're telling me.
I do own a rain jacket, but we do not do we slack off in the winter. Okay, happy.
Mm-hmm. Hey, it happens to everybody. I also don't like to go for walks when it's minus 35.
I don't want to live when it's minus 35, Nick. Why do you do that to yourself? No, it's not fine. There's nothing fine about it. It's not fine.
I have insulated pants. It's fine. But, you know,
I don't. My organs aren't insulated enough for negative 35.
It'll be all right. Your glasses will freeze to the side of your head. It's no worries. They thaw right back off.
I will say this much: the snow we had the other day, or this past winter, my wife and I, she was enjoying it far more than I was. I was like, this sucks as bad as I imagine. But my wife was like, she wanted to go walk the neighborhood, and I was like, okay. Well, halfway there, I began to realize that not only was my beard accumulating snow, but it was starting to refreeze, and my beard was crunchy. And I had like little tiny icicles trying to grow off the ends of my mustache.
Oh yeah.
Yes, for you, this is like, oh yeah, that's how it works.
That's for bog standard right there.
But I've never seen 10 inches of snow in life. So this was all very concerning to me. I'm like, why is my beard crunchy and glued to my chest?
Well, sometimes Mother Nature decides the water's going to become solid water. And that's okay, Phil. It's a natural process.
Yeah, it's only okay inside my freezer.
Well, it is good in the freezer. Better than the alternative. So, talking a little bit about different things you can do to improve your fitness. Going for walks, doing yoga, doing stretching, anything like that. Kayaking is a great one for your core, arms, and shoulders if you have access to those sorts of things. Hiking is phenomenal for your core, especially if you have a light to medium weight backpack on.
I would say like hiking is probably my favorite. And even if you don't have a backpack on, I really enjoy. Now you have to understand that when I say hiking, most of the time when you're hiking on like a path, right? I really like some of the places I've been to hike where you basically have a trail cut through the woods.
Yep.
So you're stepping on uneven terrain, you're stepping on roots, and that is the best thing because I find that the very thing that I need to work on the most, which is like the little, like you said, the little stabilizer muscles, like around your knee and around your ankles, all that gets worked so much. And then
you'll be sore in all kinds of new places.
Well, and the other thing I noticed is that like, probably this is an indication that my back is not in the greatest shape, but like I start to feel like a little bit of tension in my extreme lower back on the side of my spine. And I know it is because I'm having to like constantly work my core back and forth to balance myself.
Do you have trekking poles?
No, never used them.
Try them. Get a pair of cheap ones from Walmart, whatever. Don't worry about the weight of them. They will get rid of that lower back stiffness and soreness almost immediately.
I've always kind of looked at it as like, it's just a chance to work a muscle that doesn't get worked near often enough. Because like my problem, Nick, is that I work in a white collar office job these days. So in a 9-hour day, I am looking for excuses to get up out of my desk and like walk or do something because I just hate sitting all day. But I also have days where I will literally plant my butt in a chair and except to go to the break room for lunch or the bathroom, I am welded to that chair punching spreadsheets for a full day. And I know it is the worst thing for my hip. It's the worst thing for my back.
Right.
But like that is the nature of my job. And unfortunately there's a lot of people like we have patrons that are truck drivers. Yeah. Guess what you do when you're a truck driver?
You're sitting.
You sit there and stare out the windshield for a whole day. It's like those are the moments in time where like those are the most difficult fitness situations in my mind.
They can
because you have to do your job, you have to pursue your career, but your career is sedentary.
It absolutely is. But I'm not talking about removing that amount of effort from your hike because the effort is still there. But what it does is it gives you a third point of stabilization. So you're not getting those shocks to your back and those shocks to your lower back.
Okay. I see where you're going.
It makes such a huge difference I think it would actually make you should try a standing desk. That would actually might be great.
Yeah, Rachel, ask her husband where I work, and he will tell you that the chance of me getting a standing desk is. We will find honest politicians before I manage to get a standing desk in my office.
Honest politicians in Illinois.
Even better. Although I did catch myself wondering the other day, where would you be more likely to find an honest, or where would you be less likely to find an honest politician, Louisiana or Illinois?
Oh man, those are both pretty corrupt. Pretty bad. There's been a lot of smuggling in both for a very long time.
I mean, I don't know that Louisiana or Illinois invented crooked politics, but they certainly worked hard to perfect them.
They have been working very hard to perfect it for a very long time. But I think that that would actually help your wife too a lot with her ankle of trying some trekking poles.
That's actually worth pointing out to her.
Because for me, I've got a knee that I injured in a dirt bike thing a long time ago when I was a teenager, and then I hurt the other ankle in a different dirt bike thing. Both of them were stupid.
I see a theme developing here.
Yeah, vehicles and me, we don't get along. There's a reason why I own a pickup and nothing else but a lawn tractor. Vehicles and me, I like going too fast, too much. So I keep away from the fast vehicles as much as humanly possible anymore. But it takes those shocks out of stuff. So like, I know you guys have a lot of flatland hiking, but if you're anywhere where you're doing a little bit of stepping up, stepping down, it's additional points that you can apply pressure to that take pressure off of your joints. So you're not creating those shocks and creating that wear and tear on yourself.
No, I mean, that makes sense to me.
I'll bring an extra pair for you guys, or 2 pair for when we go up to Michigan. You guys can try them out.
I won't turn it down. I'll mention it to Gillian too.
I think she would really like it. My father-in-law, he's got a knee injury as well. And he used to get back pain a lot from hiking, and they really like doing hiking. But when we went to Tennessee with them this spring, they were keeping up, and he said he had 0 pain from any of it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he used a set of trekking poles. They make a huge difference.
Let's dig into this last bullet point, because this might be the one that surprises the audience. Mental health.
Can't have a healthy body without a healthy mind.
I will be the first to admit, there is some segment of the audience out there, and I might have been guilty of this a time or two, and you probably are every now and then too, that says, feelings? That sounds horrible. I don't have those.
Hey, there are times when feelings are inconvenient.
Yeah, they are extremely inconvenient most of the time. But I will say wholeheartedly that, I think mental health, and we've talked about it on the show before. We've talked about it. Frankly, we need to get Eddie on to because that is his wheelhouse, is mental health. But I feel like mental health is something that gets overlooked, sometimes intentionally, especially in some of the circles we run in. And it really concerns me because I've never been particularly susceptible to depression, never been suicidal. I have had severe anxiety before. Sure. A component of the post-traumatic stress disorder I had was anxiety and survivor guilt and a couple other things. But if I had not done the work to address my mental health back then, I am fully convinced I would not have gotten to the point I'm at today, where I'm a stable homeowner, a taxpayer, still married to my wife 20 years after we met. I've seen so many other people from the veteran, the first responder community neglect their mental health, sometimes out of fear of what it would mean for their career, sometimes because there's just massive stigma in the world about admitting that you have a problem. And I've seen it lead to some of their death. I've seen it lead to a lot of them just falling short of what they should have been and where they should have gone. People that were constantly making really unhealthy lifestyle decisions because they were trying to find a way around the anxiety or a way around the depression or whatever. But it wound up, self-medicating. And
that's a huge one.
Yeah. I mean, I jokingly tell people I have a prescription for cigars and coffee. I have to have it. And I don't know. I don't know if you call it a vice or medication, but like for me, I always go back to this idea that like if if there's something going on in your mental health, it deserves to be addressed. I think it also impacts your physical health because like
It absolutely does.
there's a whole body of evidence out there that shows that if your mental health is in peril, it does cause your blood pressure to be higher. It causes a whole host of negative effects on your body. And that's before we get to things like because you're depressed, you overeat, and that has its own problems, or because you're anxious, you self-medicate, and that has its own problems. Like mental
long-term
health
anxiety
impacts
has
everything.
zero positive impact.
No, long term anything when it relates to mental health. And understand that like when I say long-term mental health, like we've talked on the show before about like how my wife struggled with postpartum. We've talked about my post-traumatic stress disorder. Most people that are out there have had some kind of traumatic event in their life, and they had to do a little bit of work to put themselves back together afterwards. That's normal.
It is.
I'm talking about when it goes on unchecked for years and years and years. And it's like I tell people, my personal signpost for when something's a problem is when it stops you from doing what you want to do.
Yep.
Like the moment at which my mental health started to interfere with the relationship I was building with my wife, that was the moment at which I was like, we have a problem. This needs to get fixed. And I was committed to fixing it no matter what it took, because the other side of the equation was if I don't fix this, this is what's going to cost me, and I'm not willing to lose that.
Absolutely.
And Gillian made the same decision about postpartum. Like we limped along. We did everything we could to kind of like self-rescue. And then when that wasn't working and she realized that our relationship was starting to drift apart, she was like, if I don't fix this, I could lose my husband. Not acceptable.
Yep.
So that is always the thing I tell people when it comes to like caring for your mental health. Like there is no downside to it. There is
mind
no
is part of your body, man.
Well, your mind
can't live without it.
Your mind drives your body. The same way that like everybody's heard the anecdote of like the woman who lifted a car off of her kids.
Yep.
When the brain says you can do something, you can do it.
Yeah.
When the brain says you can't do something, you cannot.
You also cannot. Yeah.
And when your brain says, I just want to crawl in a hole and die, guess what's going to happen? Like my experience with death has always been that, there are very few circumstances where a person is clinging to life with everything they have and their body lets go. It happens, but it doesn't happen often.
There is damage so traumatic that you can't overcome it. Yeah.
But then there's situations where a person probably could have recovered, but they give up here and that's it. They will wither and die because their brain is just not driving them anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about anxiety. You're saying you're right. It causes higher blood pressure. It causes or is caused by higher cortisol levels, which cause a few other hormonal issues.
Yep.
That can cause other health effects.
Joint inflammation, tissue swelling. I mean,
tissue. Yep. Lower your immune system. Then you just get sick more often, which makes you feel even worse. Not great. Not to mention, a lot of the people that do try to self-medicate for anxiety try to self-medicate with things like alcohol. And yeah, I like a nice glass of whiskey as much as the next guy. Phil, I know you do too. But it is a glass of whiskey on occasion.
Not a bottle every night to put yourself in bed.
Exactly. If you feel like in order to function in an environment, you have to have that, that might be a sign that there's something going on, whether it's alcoholism or anxiety that you're self-medicating, who knows? I mean,
Now, here's a thought that dovetails into mental health, and I'm curious what you think, because not everybody agrees about this. But do you believe that diet impacts mental health?
Absolutely. Unquestionably it does.
Because again, some people
poor physical health.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is because like, to tie this back to what we were talking about right before that, like I know that like the better I've done eating, the better I've done taking care of my body, the better I have felt. And not only that, but like the better I've been able to deal with stress, the better I've been able to deal with, just anxiety and all the things that life throws at me. And the times when I was, I just had that thought. So the heaviest I've been in recent times, and for anybody that's been around the show for a while, it was actually prepper camp 3-4 years ago now, maybe somewhere in there. But there is that notorious picture that somebody took of me from the most unflattering angle, which was directly from the side of me, and I looked like I was 8 months pregnant. I weighed 267 pounds at the time of that picture. I was incredibly unhappy. And reflecting back on that time, like, admittedly, I kind of had the sword of Damocles hanging over my head back then for fear of losing my job for a variety of reasons that were stupid in my opinion. But I remember, like, there was a time when I was like, it's okay. You know, it is what it is. I'll land on my feet. I always do. I've got plenty of job skills. I'll find something. And then I remember this time where the anxiety really, really took hold of me hard. And I started going down the rabbit hole of, it's going to come. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose everything. And it never occurred to me until literally this moment that those two things were linked.
Look, your body's meant to function within a certain range, right?
So what you're telling me is 267 pounds and 5'11" was not the range.
That must be out of your range, man. I mean, I know I was it 2 years ago now? I was about 260, 265. I'm a little taller than you, not that much, but still too much. I was sleeping like crap. I was feeling like crap. My allergies were worse. I was having heartburn every couple weeks or every couple days sometimes. Horrible heartburn in the middle of the night.
Which then means you're not sleeping.
Which makes you not sleep even more.
Has
which
its own
makes you
set
feel
of
even
downstream
worse.
effects.
So you're drinking a bunch more coffee, which is probably not helping the heartburn. You know, got down to about 225. The heartburn went away entirely. I started sleeping through the night without a problem. I don't snore anymore, or not as much. My dog now snores more than I do. We need to get her weight under control too. The neighbors like to feed my dog treats when we go for walks. We try to walk the dog for her fitness as well as ours. And sometimes we'll hit 3 different neighbors' houses and all 3 of them will feed the damn dog. They're not helping. Nicest people. But my dog is too fat. I'm trying to fix this. Stop feeding her.
I was going to say, since you got me thinking about it, like with the snoring and the heartburn and everything, I do remember that Andrew struggled with that too for a while. And I'm not diming him out. He's talked about it on this show just been a very long time. But since he's not here to defend himself, we can talk about him anyway.
There you go. He can yell at me in the comments.
Piss on him. It's for the good of the group.
It is.
But yeah, I do remember that he mentioned that, like, when his weight started creeping up, the heartburn got really bad. I would love to blame his snoring on that, but I've known Andrew for a good long while, and we've not slept together. That'd be weird. But we have slept in tents not far away from each other on several occasions, and he snores like a son of a bitch in Chainsaw. And he's done that plus or minus 20 pounds. So I don't think the weight's the problem.
Well, you know, and it might not be. It might be just how his sinuses are. But for me, the additional weight definitely was. I mean, if you look at a picture of me from a few years ago, my face looks wildly different than it does now, just because of the weight gain. And I think that was causing breathing constriction.
It usually does.
You know, I can't imagine it helped.
You suddenly have me wondering what I look like underneath this beard.
Shave it off.
No. Dude, do you know how long it takes to look?
Oh, a long time. It is effort.
Gillian and I just cut like a couple of inches off of it because it was getting a little bit woolly. And like, it takes years to get to this length.
Oh, it absolutely does.
I'm just getting crap. Every once in a blue moon, I look at my face and I'm like, what do you look like underneath that? I mean, I've seen like the pictures of me when I was in the Army. So obviously there was a time when I was bald-headed by choice and had no beard. Well, but the last time I didn't have facial hair was when I got married on my wedding day.
Well,
besides, if
you're not redoing that one.
No, and if I completely shave, my daughter has vowed to never speak to me again.
Also, you'll probably get a headache from all the from the loss of hair weight pulling your skin down. I know there was a girl that I was in high school with. She had really long hair.
She shaved her beard off?
No, she was she was donating her hair to one of those
Locks of Love or something like that.
Yeah, that must be the one. And she said it was the wildest thing. She got her hair all cut down to like 5 or 6 inches long from like down to her butt. And she said it was fine for about 20 minutes. And all of a sudden she had the worst migraine she had ever had. And when she talked to her hairdresser, told her that if you remove that much hair that quickly, it changes the pressure on your scalp. And it can cause migraines and headaches. It's wild.
New fear unlocked.
I know, right? So shave your beard, you're going to get a headache, maybe.
This just convinces me that I'm not.
Never shave.
Men are not supposed to shave.
Probably not. I mean, I can't grow a beard. I look like a ragged homeless person if I don't shave every day. So,
I don't know where I inherited the Viking gene from, but I'm thankful for it.
It's winning right there. It's glorious. But your brain is another part of your body, and if you don't have the right nutrients in your body, you get muscle cramps. So if you don't have the right nutrients in your body, your brain's not going to work right. It doesn't seem to me that there's any way you could argue that your diet does not impact the way you think or your mood or your hormone levels, just like anything else. I mean, you're not going to see Michael Phelps eating gummy bears and ice cream and then going and performing well in the Olympics. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And, like without getting into like zombie apocalypse talk, but like my focus on maintaining my health has always been two things. It has been in moments of extreme need. I would really like my body to do what my brain commands it to, so that Absolutely. I can take care of myself, take care of my family, do what has to be done. But also because I've watched several people get into advanced age and fall apart.
Yep.
It does
not take much.
I have seen people on the other side of 65 who are on like 5 and 6 daily medications. And I'm not talking about like they've been diabetic their whole lives, they have to have insulin, but I'm talking about like they let their blood sugar get out of control for too many years. So now they're insulin dependent, or they're on blood pressure medication and 10,000 other things. And I'm just like, I look at all of that and I think to myself, I'm like, what is my survivability really like if I need a daily cocktail of 5 or 6 drugs to keep alive? And
it's non-existent.
And what is that quality of life that if I miss this drug for more than a couple of days, something really bad happens, I wind up in the hospital? Like that worries me from the perspective of if things suddenly go sideways, but it also makes me think to myself, like, I want the way I explained it to my wife was because we talked about what our fitness goals were. And I told Gillian, I'm like, my fitness goals are, I don't ever want to run a 6-minute mile. Not even in my priority order. I don't care if I never bench 200 pounds. Mm-hmm. Not in my priority. Don't care. But I do want to be that guy that is out in the front yard, 65 years old, ripping brakes off of his truck and doing brake jobs. I want to be that guy that's 65 years old, maintaining my lawn, maintaining my property, working on stuff around the house. I want to be the guy who's out there with his wife hiking in his retirement, making the young guys huff and puff and look stupid because they can't keep up with the old fart.
We ran into a couple the second time we went down to the Smoky Mountains at the top of a waterfall at the end of like a 6.5 mile just out. And we had 6.5 miles to go back. This couple was in their late 70s and they were doing the same trail and they looked just fine. I was dogged.
But see, that is my fitness goal. That's what I want. I want living to old age means nothing to me if I have to spend the last 10 or 20 years of my life basically bedridden, going from the bed to the couch, because that's as far as I can go without keeling over. Like, living to old age means nothing to me if I have to spend it in a hospital bed or in an old folks home because I didn't take care of myself, it means
Quality of
nothing.
life is important.
Quality of life is my goal. It is my goal now. It is my goal later. It is all about quality of life. It is, what can I do to make this very broken, fairly abused body continue to do the things I want to do now at 42? And what can I do to make sure that in 20 or 25 or 30 years, I can still do those things?
Yeah.
And I keep coming back around to the simple idea that it's about staying active. It's about treating your body a little bit appropriately every now and then, and just focus it. Not so much, to me, it is all about focus on not losing anything.
Yeah.
Because once you get to this side of 40, free testosterone starts to go down. If you don't work at it, muscle mass starts to decrease. And those are all things that I have the ability to kind of like, hold at bay or make progress on, as long as I spend kind of the same conversation we had about diet. It's not never eat pizza. It's just eat eggs more than pizza.
Right.
Well, if I make the decision that every now and then I want to sit on the couch and watch a show with my wife, that's fine.
Yep.
But our asses better be outside walking 4 or 5 times that week if I want to be walking when I'm 65.
Absolutely.
And especially my wife with her ankle injury, me with multiple injuries to multiple joints. I have a decision to make of, like, do we want to be ambulatory and in good health in our old age? Do we want to be able to go out and do things, or do we not? And I've seen older couples who are basically spending their retirement hobbling around, waiting till the end. And I'm like, I don't want that.
Nope.
I want to be 70 years old, embarrassing kids half my age, because y'all can't keep up with the old fart who's out here kicking ass and taking names.
That sounds like a great plan to me.
Yeah. But like you said at the very beginning of the show, neither of us are pinnacles of physical fitness, and neither of us are going to be modeling for underwear ads anytime soon. And I don't frankly care, and I don't think Nick does. Rachel might disagree, but, I think the two of us both agree that we're much more focused on like practical strength, practical flexibility, and balance. We're focused on maintaining our bodies the best we're able, so that they do what they're supposed to do when called upon.
Do what they're supposed to do. Do what we want them to do. And so you don't hurt every day. I mean, I was told by a doctor that the normal amount of pain is 0 on a daily basis. I'm not sure he wasn't lying to me. But
I mean, far be it for me to argue with the doctor.
No, I do it all the time.
I was about to say, like, I've never done that before. But I don't think he's ever met many combat veterans, because, Motrin...
blue-collar workers.
Yeah. I mean, for some of us, Motrin is a food group.
Change your socks, drink some water, take a Motrin?
Yes. Yes, especially
although
when
water is one we probably should have thrown in here. If you're not drinking an ounce per kilogram per day, you're not drinking enough water.
Does it count if I pour my water through coffee beans?
No, it does not, because coffee's a diuretic.
I don't believe you. I drink lots of coffee and I pee a lot.
Diuretic.
So I drink a lot of coffee and I pee a lot. So the water's got to be coming from somewhere.
Yeah, it's coming from where it should be, in your body.
Well, then I'm replenishing it with more coffee.
Hey man, when you get to pee out rocks, don't come bitching to me. Is all I'm saying.
Thank you, Nick, for giving me that to look forward to.
You're welcome.
Okay. I guess we'll go ahead and sew this one up. Nick is going to shame me into drinking water. I actually do drink water occasionally. I just like coffee much, much better.
Hey, look, I like coffee a lot better too, but I mean, just do that. Keep one of these with you all day, or like I do 2 of them or 3 of them, whatever. And try to drink, about an ounce of water per kilogram of body weight. And that gets you kind of in a ball back.
What's
2.2 pounds to the kilogram. So divide your weight in half, and that's how many ounces of water you should drink, roundabout.
I was going to make a joke about communist math, but,
communist math, cocaine bundles, whatever you got to do.
Okay, so you could have said drink one ounce of water per cocaine bundle of weight.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
See, I will measure anything
in bundles of cocaine. Yes.
In bundles of cocaine or like jugs of milk, anything that doesn't involve using the metric system.
That's fair.
The only thing I'm willing to measure in metric is ammunition.
Fair enough.
Yep, the ultimate screw you to Europeans. They gave us a metric system and we use it for nothing except measuring ammunition.
Fair enough. Night, everybody.
All right, Matter of Fact's podcast is going to go out the door. I'm going to go tend to my mental health with probably more coffee. Just piss Nick off.
That's fine.
Talk to you all in a week. Good night, everybody.